It started on an ordinary Tuesday morning, when the sky was just beginning to blush with pale light and the streets were still quiet enough that you could hear your own thoughts. Sam sat at his desk with a steaming cup of coffee and a to-do list that was already too long. The glow of his computer screen felt oddly comforting, his digital sanctuary where most of his business lived. His online store had finally been picking up momentum after months of slow sales, and the dashboard showed a promising rise in orders. There was a sense of satisfaction in watching numbers climb, knowing that every one of them represented a customer somewhere out in the world. But when he logged in that morning, something was off. The site loaded slower than usual, as though it was struggling to breathe. The home page looked fine at first, but when he clicked into the back-end dashboard, strange messages began to appear, cryptic pop-ups and flickers of code that didn't belong. At first, Sam thought it was just a glitch. He refreshed, cleared his cache, even restarted his computer. But the problem persisted, and this time there was a new message in red across the screen. "We have your data." His stomach sank. Panic set in as he frantically checked his email and saw a message waiting in his inbox. It was short, almost polite, but its implications were brutal. The sender demanded payment in cryptocurrency in exchange for restoring access to his site and his customer database. They even included a small sample of stolen data, names, emails, partial credit card numbers, just to prove they weren't bluffing. Sam felt the blood drain from his face. He had heard of cyberattacks, of course, but those were things that happened to big companies with massive IT teams and PR departments to clean up the mess. Not to people like him. Not to someone running a modest online shop out of a cramped apartment. He called his hosting provider, hoping for a miracle, but they confirmed what he already feared. The breach was real. The hackers had slipped through some outdated plugin in his website, and unless he paid, there was no guarantee he'd get his data back. They advised him to disconnect everything immediately, change passwords, and start backing up whatever he could salvage. The next few hours passed in a blur of frantic keystrokes and mounting dread. Every password reset felt like bailing water from a sinking ship. Every second he stayed offline, he imagined customers trying to place orders and being greeted with error messages or, worse, being redirected to malicious pages. He pictured angry emails piling up, refund requests, chargebacks. He could almost see his reputation crumbling in real time. By nightfall, Sam was sitting in the dark, staring at the ransom note again. The amount they demanded wasn't enormous, but it was enough to sting. More than that, it felt wrong, giving in, paying them, feeding the cycle. But refusing came with its own cost. His business could die in a single night, and no one would even know why. He thought about the years he had put into building his dream, the sacrifices, the late nights, the birthdays missed because he was working. The hackers didn't care about any of that. To them, he was just another mark, another easy win. In the end, he didn't pay. Instead, he wiped the site clean, rebuilt it from scratch, and started over. It took weeks to regain even a fraction of the trust he had lost. Some customers never came back. Some sent messages of support, saying they understood that it could happen to anyone. But Sam knew better now. It hadn't just happened. It had been allowed to happen because he hadn't taken the threats seriously enough. Months later, when the site was back to normal and sales were finally steady again, Sam installed a new layer of security, hired a consultant to keep his defenses updated, and set up automatic backups that would run whether he remembered or not. He couldn't undo what had happened, but he could make sure it wouldn't happen again. Sometimes, late at night, he still thought about the people on the other end of that message, the faceless figures who had slipped into his life and left it in ruins for a time. He wondered if they ever thought about the people they hurt, or if it was just business to them. He never got an answer. But he learned something from the attack, something hard and expensive, that in a world where everything lives online, trust is fragile and protection is everything. Sam couldn't stop thinking about it. Even after rebuilding his site and patching every security hole, a part of him felt unfinished, like the story wasn't over. The hackers had taken more than just data, they had taken a piece of his pride. Every time he thought about how easily they had slipped past him, how they had laughed, because of course they had laughed, his chest tightened with a mix of anger and humiliation. He began staying up later, long after the workday was done, reading everything he could about cybersecurity. At first, it was just to make sure it never happened again, but the deeper he went, the more obsessed he became. He started watching tutorials, tinkering with open-source tools, joining forums where white-hat hackers shared tips and stories about finding vulnerabilities and patching them. One night, scrolling through a dark web thread he shouldn't have been on, he saw a familiar name. It was buried in a bragging post by someone using a ridiculous alias, boasting about the small shop job they had pulled off a few months back, the one where they had siphoned customer data and made the owner sweat. Sam's jaw tightened as he read on. They were talking about him. Something in him snapped. He didn't tell anyone, not his friends, not his family, what he was about to do. Over the next few weeks, Sam followed digital breadcrumbs. The hacker was careful, but not perfect. A slipped IP address here, a reused alias there. Sam collected every clue, building a map of their online habits. He wasn't a hacker, not really, but he was learning fast, and he had one thing the hacker didn't: motivation. When he finally traced them to a city on the other side of the world, he knew there was nothing the police would do. This wasn't a Hollywood movie where the FBI swoops in for justice. So Sam took a different approach. He broke into their server, not to steal, not to damage, but to watch. For days, he monitored their activity, reading their chats, seeing who they worked with, what they planned next. And then, one quiet night, Sam made his move. He didn't attack them directly. Instead, he leaked everything he had collected, chat logs, wallet addresses, their own sloppy hacks, into the same underground forums where they bragged. Within hours, other hackers were on them, tearing apart their anonymity, tracing them for sport. Sam didn't need revenge. He just needed the right people to know where to look. A week later, their alias went silent. No more posts, no more boasts. It was as if they had vanished. Sam shut down his surveillance, wiped his tracks, and sat back for the first time in months, exhausted but strangely calm. His business was running again, stronger than ever. His customers were returning. And somewhere out there, the hacker who had humiliated him had finally learned what it felt like to be the one on the run. But the strangest part was what came after. Sam didn't stop learning. The taste of justice, no, the taste of control, had changed him. He kept studying, kept building better security, and occasionally, when he stumbled across another attack on some small business owner just like him, he would step in quietly, leaving behind a fix or a warning. He wasn't just a shop owner anymore. He had become something else entirely, someone who understood that in a world full of predators, sometimes you had to become a hunter. Sam didn't stop after the first time. At first, he told himself it was about prevention, about making sure no one else went through what he had. But soon the line blurred. The late-night hunts became addictive. The thrill of following a trail of digital breadcrumbs, the rush of slipping into someone's system unnoticed, the quiet satisfaction of leaving behind chaos for those who had caused it. He began to find patterns, groups of attackers who worked together, shared tools, swapped victims like playing cards. He discovered forums where entire businesses were bought and sold in the shadows, where ransomware operators traded access to networks for profit. And the deeper he went, the darker it became. These weren't just petty thieves. Some were orchestrating attacks that could cripple hospitals, shut down infrastructure, bankrupt companies. Sam upgraded his gear. He bought a separate laptop, air-gapped from his business machine. He learned to mask his IP address with layers of encryption, spinning up virtual machines that could vanish with a keystroke. The glow of multiple monitors lit up his apartment at night, the room humming with a quiet, relentless energy. He started going by a handle of his own, Echo. The first major strike he made as Echo was against a phishing ring that had been scamming elderly people with fake tech support calls. He didn't just report them. He broke into their servers, encrypted their own files, and posted their scam scripts online. The ring dissolved within weeks, its members turning on each other, terrified of who had exposed them. Sam began receiving quiet messages through the same forums he once only lurked in. People who had been victims, small business owners, freelancers, even students, thanked him anonymously for what he'd done. Some offered tips, leads on other attackers. He realized he wasn't working alone anymore. But with notoriety came risk. One night, after months of clean operations, He logged in to find a message waiting for him, not from a victim, not from a fan, but from someone who knew exactly who he was. Nice work, Echo. Your little crusade is cute, but you've stepped into the wrong ring. Attached was a photo of Sam's apartment building, taken from across the street. For the first time since his own attack, he felt real fear. Whoever this was, they weren't just another script kiddie bragging in the dark web. They were organized, careful, and dangerously close. He spent the next few days in a haze of paranoia, checking every lock twice, covering his webcams, wiping and re-wiping his drives. But when the fear subsided, something else took its place: determination. If they wanted to play a bigger game, he would play. Sam began tracing the group back, not just to usernames but to servers, then to physical infrastructure. This time, it wasn't just about justice, it was survival. Each move felt like a chess game played at lightning speed. IP traces, DDoS diversions, fake leads planted to throw them off. He learned to think like them, to predict what they would do next. And then, one night, he struck back. He dropped their entire operation into the hands of international law enforcement: names, addresses, transaction records, the works. It wasn't easy. It took weeks of planning, a careful hand, and risking exposure every step of the way. But when news broke of a global cybercrime ring taken down in a coordinated raid, Sam sat in the glow of his monitors and allowed himself a rare smile. He was no longer just someone who had been hacked. He was someone hackers feared. Still, he knew the war wasn't over. The dark web was infinite, and for every ring taken down, another would rise. But Sam, Echo, was ready. His business thrived by day, his digital crusade by night. The man who had once been a victim was now something else entirely, a ghost in the machine, hunting the predators who once hunted him.